I hung the bird feeder on a Sunday morning in February, and by Monday afternoon Mallory Fairfield was standing on my front step with a clipboard and a smile that could freeze salt water. This is St. Augustine, Florida, where winter means 50 degrees and the occasional cold snap that brings ice instead of sunshine. I moved here 6 months ago for a park ranger position at Anastasia State Park, quiet work that suited me after years of dealing with tourists who thought rules were suggestions. I needed simple. I needed predictable. The landing at Riverstone Landing Association promised both in the glossy brochure, but the paperwork I signed turned out to be a trap, and the bird feeder was just the excuse Mallory needed to spring it. She introduced herself as the social committee chair, but everyone in the complex called her by a different name when she was not around. Her black bob was shellacked in place despite the wind, and she wore a black parka with teal earmuffs that matched the clipboard cover. She did not wait for me to invite her in. She just started talking, her voice bright and sharp like breaking glass. "You cannot have that," she said, pointing past me toward the little metal shepherd's hook I had planted in the side yard. "It causes winter mess. Seeds everywhere. Birds making noise. We have rules." I looked at the feeder. It was a simple setup, a green plastic tray hanging from a decorative hook, and I had filled it with sunflower seeds that morning. A few sparrows were perched on the edge, picking at the pile. I had checked the HOA covenants twice before installing it. Nothing in the rules prohibited bird feeders. "I did not see anything in the documents," I said. Mallory's smile got tighter. "That is because you are looking at the wrong version. We updated the rules last year. All outdoor fixtures require approval. You did not submit a request." I asked where to submit one. She handed me a card with an email address printed in tiny letters and told me I had 72 hours to comply or face a fine. Then she walked away, her boots crunching on the frost that had settled overnight. I sent the email that night. I included photos of the feeder, a copy of the covenant section I had referenced, and a polite request for clarification. The next morning I got a bounce-back message. The address was invalid. I called the management company listed on my lease and got a voicemail that said they only handled urgent maintenance requests. I tried the HOA board email listed on the welcome packet and got another bounce. By Wednesday, a door hanger appeared on my knob. It was printed on cheap cardstock, already warped from the moisture in the air, and it had a red stamp at the top that said "Violation Notice" in all caps. The text underneath said I was being fined $50 per day starting immediately. No hearing. No appeal process. Just a line at the bottom that said payment was due within 10 days or they would file a lien. I kept that door hanger. I kept every single one that came after it, and by the end of the week I had 4 of them, all with edges that curled and softened from the damp cold. They were always delivered early in the morning or late at night, like whoever was dropping them off did not want to be seen. I started checking my doorbell camera, but the angle did not catch the walkway. The bird feeder stayed up. I was not going to take it down until someone gave me a real answer, and I was not going to pay a fine for following rules that did not exist. But the situation was eating at me. I work on call shifts, and if there is a medical emergency or a lost hiker at the park, I have to respond fast. The landing at Riverstone Landing Association controls the main gate, and if they decided to lock me out during a storm or a call-out, I would be screwed. That was the leverage they had, and Mallory knew it. I started keeping a notebook. Every email I sent, every call I made, every door hanger I received. I photographed everything and saved it in a cloud folder with timestamps. I also started asking around. The complex had about 60 units, and most people kept to themselves, but there was one guy, Colin, who lived 2 buildings over and always waved when I saw him. He was retired military, late 50s, the kind of guy everyone liked because he helped with snow shoveling and never complained. I caught him outside one afternoon and asked if he had ever had trouble with the HOA. He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Mallory has been targeting people for years," he said. "She picks someone, finds a violation, and then buries them in paperwork until they either pay up or move out. She tried it on me last year over a wreath on my door. I had to threaten to bring it up at the annual meeting before she backed off." I asked why no one had reported her. Colin shrugged. Most people do not want the fight, and Mallory has friends on the board. They cover for each other. That night I got another door hanger. This one had a new line at the bottom, handwritten in pen, removal required by end of week or legal action will proceed. I let her talk, because every word was helping me. That was the thought I kept repeating to myself every time Mallory showed up with a new threat. I did not argue. I did not yell. I just listened, took notes, and added it to the file. Because I had already started building something she did not know about, and every escalation she made was another piece of evidence I could use later. The surprise inspection happened on a Saturday. I was clearing ice off my car when Mallory appeared with a camera and a man I had never seen before. He introduced himself as the property manager, but he did not offer a handshake. Mallory did all the talking. She walked around my unit with the camera held up like a weapon, snapping pictures of the bird feeder, the walkway, the front step, the windowsills. She narrated each shot out loud, her voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Seed debris on walkway. Unsanctioned fixture in side yard. Potential pest attraction. The property manager nodded along, writing notes on a pad. I asked if I was allowed to be present for this inspection. Mallory smiled and said they were on HOA common property, so I did not have a say. She was wrong, but I did not correct her. I just pulled out my phone and started taking my own pictures, including shots of her photographing my property without notice and the property manager failing to show credentials. When they finished, Mallory handed me a new notice. This one was printed on official letterhead and included a line about being assessed for legal fees if I did not comply within 48 hours. The amount had jumped to $500, plus an additional $50 per day. Go ahead and call the police, Mallory said. They always take our side. I did not call the police. I called an attorney instead. The consult was free, and the lawyer listened to my story with the kind of tired patience that told me he had heard worse. He said the HOA was within their rights to enforce covenants, but they had to follow proper notice procedures and provide access to updated rules. If they were hiding documents or charging bogus fees to access them, that was a problem. He told me to file a records request and document every refusal. I sent the records request by certified mail on Monday. I requested a full copy of the updated covenants, all meeting minutes from the past 2 years, and a ledger of fees assessed against my unit. The receipt came back signed, so I knew someone had received it. A week passed with no response. I sent a follow-up email to every address I could find. Another week passed. Then the lien threat arrived. It came by certified mail, same as my request, and it was 3 pages long. The first page was a summary of alleged violations, each one listed with a date and a dollar amount. The second page was a breakdown of legal fees, including charges for document preparation, filing fees, and something called administrative costs. The third page was a demand for immediate payment of $1,200, plus interest accruing daily. I read it twice, then called Colin. He came over that night and looked at the paperwork with the kind of focus that made me glad he was on my side. He pointed to the legal fees line and said it was garbage. The HOA did not have a lawyer on retainer. They used a local management company that charged flat rates. If Mallory was adding legal fees, she was either making it up or paying someone under the table. We need to find out who else she has done this to, Colin said. That was when my snowblower broke. It happened during a freak cold snap that dropped temperatures into the 20s and left a thin layer of ice across the parking lot. I had been using the blower to clear my assigned space and the walkway to my door, but the engine seized halfway through and refused to restart. I tried everything, checked the oil, cleaned the spark plug. Nothing worked. By the time I gave up, the walkway was half cleared and the rest was a slick mess. Mallory was there within an hour. She took pictures of the ice, the abandoned snowblower, and my half-cleared walkway. Then she handed me another door hanger, this one accusing me of creating a safety hazard and failing to maintain my assigned area. She said it was proof I could not be trusted to follow basic property care standards. I borrowed a shovel and finished the job by hand. Then I went inside and updated my file. The lien threat, the inspection photos, the snowblower incident, all of it went into the timeline. I also started cross-referencing the dates on my door hangers with the dates on the lien letter. None of them matched. The HOA was claiming I had been in violation since the day I installed the feeder, but the first door hanger did not show up until 3 days later. That gap mattered. Colin and I started talking to other residents. Most people did not want to get involved, but a few opened up. There was a woman in Building C who had been fined for parking in a guest spot overnight. She said she had submitted a guest pass request a week in advance, but Mallory claimed it was never received. Another guy said he had been charged $100 for leaving his trash bin out past collection day, even though the truck had not come until noon and the rule said bins had to be in by 10. The pattern was clear. Mallory was using the HOA rules as a weapon, selectively enforcing them and making up violations when the real rules did not fit. And she was getting away with it because no one had the time or money to fight back. Then I got the gate lockout. It happened on a Wednesday night during a storm. The temperature had dropped into the teens, and freezing rain was coating everything in a layer of ice. I got a call from dispatch at 11 p.m. A hiker had gone missing on the trails near the park, and search and rescue needed all available rangers. I threw on my gear and ran to my car, but when I got to the main gate, the code did not work. I tried it 3 times, then called the emergency number listed on the gate keypad. No answer. I called the management company. Voicemail. I could see the road beyond the gate, empty and clear. The park was 15 minutes away, and every second I wasted was a second the hiker was out there in the cold. I called Colin, and he came down in his robe and tried his code. It did not work either. The gate system had been reset, and no one had sent out the new codes. I ended up ramming the gate with my car. It bent the arm enough for me to squeeze through, and I drove to the park with my heart pounding and my hands shaking. The hiker was fine. Turned out she had just taken a wrong turn and ended up at a campground a mile away, but the whole incident had shaved years off my life. When I got back at 3 a.m., the gate arm was still bent, and there was a new door hanger on my knob. This one said I was being assessed for damage to HOA property. That was when I stopped being polite. I called the attorney again and told him everything: the lien threat, the bogus fees, the gate lockout. He said I had grounds for a harassment claim and possibly a negligence suit if the gate lockout had put someone at risk. He also said I should file a complaint with the state because HOAs in Florida are required to provide access to records within 10 business days of a written request. If they had been sitting on my request for 3 weeks, that was a violation. I filed the complaint that morning. I also sent a second certified letter to the HOA board, copying the management company and every email address I could find. This one was not polite. It laid out the timeline, referenced the state statute, and demanded a full response within 5 business days or I would escalate to small claims court. 2 days later, I got a response. It was not from the board. It was from Mallory, and it came as a personal email. She said the records I had requested were available for a fee of $200, payable by check only. She said the fee was standard and covered copying costs and administrative time. She did not mention the state law that capped such fees at 50 cents per page. I did not pay the fee. I forwarded the email to my attorney and added it to the file. Then I reached out to Colin and told him what I had found. He said he knew other people who had been hit with similar fees, and he thought we could prove a pattern if we pooled our evidence. That was when the twist happened. Colin was friends with a guy on the board, someone who had been trying to push back against Mallory for months, but did not have enough support. This guy, Alan, had access to the board email server, and he accidentally stumbled on something Mallory had sent to a private group. It was a list of residents, sorted by name, unit number, and complaint history. Next to each name was a series of notes, some of them professional, some of them personal. Mine said, new resident, no history, park ranger, possible troublemaker, monitor closely. Another resident's note said, single mother, works nights, unlikely to fight back, good target for fee increases. Alan forwarded the email to Colin, and Colin brought it to me. It was the smoking gun I needed, proof that Mallory was not just enforcing rules but actively targeting people based on personal grudges and perceived vulnerability. I copied the email and sent it to my attorney. He said it was gold, the kind of evidence that could flip a case in small claims court and possibly open the board up to civil liability. But he also warned me not to share it publicly until I was ready to use it, because once Mallory knew it was out there, she would try to cover her tracks. So I kept it quiet. I told Colin to sit on it, and I told Alan to act like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I kept building my file. Every door hanger, every email, every timestamp, every photograph. I also started collecting statements from other residents, short written accounts of their interactions with Mallory and the fees they had been charged. By the end of the month, I had a 3-inch binder full of evidence, all organized by date and category. Then came the second major set piece. It was a Saturday morning, and I was clearing the walkway after another overnight freeze. The ice had settled in thick patches, and I was chipping away at it with a metal scraper when Mallory appeared at the end of the path. She had her phone out, and she was filming me. "You did not clear this by the deadline," she said. "The rule says walkways must be clear by 8 a.m. It is 8:15. I looked at my watch. It was 7:58. I held it up so she could see the display, then I pulled out my own phone and took a screenshot of the time. Then I turned the camera on her and started filming back. "The deadline is 8 a.m., I said. "It is not 8 a.m. yet. You are wrong." Mallory's face went red. She stepped closer, still filming, and said I was being confrontational and hostile. She said she was going to report me to the board for harassment. I did not move. I just kept my phone pointed at her and repeated the time. 7:58. "You are wrong." She tried to argue, but she did not have a leg to stand on. The timestamp was right there, visible on both our screens. After a minute of sputtering, she turned and walked away, but not before saying I would regret this. That video became part of my file. I also saved the screenshot, printed it, and added it to the binder. Then I reached out to Alan and told him it was time to move. I had enough evidence to take to the management company, and I wanted to do it before Mallory could spin the narrative. Alan agreed. He set up a meeting with the property management supervisor, a woman named Karen, not that Karen, who had been with the company for 10 years and had a reputation for being fair but firm. Colin came with me, and so did 2 other residents who had been targeted by Mallory. We brought our binders, our photos, our certified mail receipts, everything. The meeting happened at the management company office, a small suite in a strip mall about 20 minutes from the complex. The conference room was beige and windowless, with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. The supervisor, Karen, listened to our presentation without interrupting. We laid out the timeline, the bogus fees, the hidden documents, the targeted harassment. Then I pulled out the leaked email, the one with the resident list and Mallory's notes. Karen's face went pale. She asked where I had gotten it, and I said it had been forwarded by a board member who was concerned about liability. She did not ask for names. She just took a copy and said she would investigate. But I was not done. I had one more thing, the trump card I had been holding since the beginning. I pulled out a folder and handed it to Colin first, then to Alan. Inside was a copy of my records request response, the one that had finally arrived 2 days earlier after I had filed the state complaint. It was a full set of HOA documents, including the updated covenants, the meeting minutes, and the fee ledger. And buried in the fee ledger was proof that the HOA had been charging document access fees far beyond the legal limit, hiding them as administrative costs and routing the money to a separate account controlled by Mallory. Colin and I presented it together, so Mallory could not isolate either of us. We showed Karen the receipts, the state cap on fees, and the ledger entries that did not match any authorized board expenses. Karen made notes, asked a few questions, then said she would be contacting the board president and suspending all enforcement actions until the investigation was complete. Mallory found out about the meeting within hours. She called me that night, her voice shaking with rage. She said I had violated HOA confidentiality rules by sharing internal documents and that she was going to file a lawsuit for defamation. I told her I had not shared anything confidential, only public records I had legally requested. Then I reminded her what she had said weeks earlier. "Go ahead and call the police. They always take our side." I said, "You were wrong about that too." She hung up. The next week was quiet. No door hangers, no emails, no surprise inspections. I kept the bird feeder up, and I kept adding to it, a suet cage, a water dish, a second seed tray. No one said a word. Then the board called an emergency meeting. It was mandatory for all residents, and it was held in the clubhouse on a Thursday night. The room was packed, standing room only, and the tension was thick enough to cut. The board president, a soft-spoken guy named Richard, opened by saying there had been irregularities in HOA management and that the board was taking immediate corrective action. He did not name Mallory directly, but he did not have to. She was sitting in the front row, arms crossed, face like stone. Richard said the board had voted to terminate the contract with the current social committee chair and to implement new oversight procedures for fee assessments and document requests. He also said any resident who had been charged excessive fees in the past year would receive a full refund and a formal apology. The room erupted. People started shouting questions, some angry, some relieved. Colin stood up and said he wanted to know if the board was going to address the targeting of specific residents. Richard hesitated, then said the board had received a copy of an internal email that raised serious concerns and that those concerns were being referred to legal counsel. Mallory stood up and walked out. No one stopped her. The fallout took weeks. The management company launched a full audit of HOA finances and found thousands of dollars in unaccounted fees. Some of it had gone to legitimate expenses, but a chunk of it had been routed to an account that only Mallory had access to. The board filed a police report and the state opened an investigation. I never got the full details, but I heard through Colin that Mallory had been quietly pushed out and that she was facing civil charges. As for me, I got my refund, $1,200, plus interest. The board also issued a formal letter stating that my bird feeder was compliant with all HOA rules and that no further action would be taken. I framed the letter and hung it next to my door, right above the hook where I kept the stack of old door hangers as a reminder. The bird feeder stayed up. I added more over the months, a hummingbird feeder in the spring, a finch sock in the summer. No one complained. Colin and I became good friends, and Alan ended up running for the board the next year. He won by a landslide. The gate code got fixed within a week of the meeting, and the management company installed a backup system so no one would ever get locked out during an emergency again. I still keep my file, the binder with all the evidence, in a drawer in my office. I do not think I will ever need it again, but it feels good to know it is there. The landing at Riverstone Landing Association is quieter now. The new social committee chair is a retired teacher who organizes potlucks and holiday decorations, and she has never once mentioned my bird feeders. The rules are still there, thick and complicated, but they are enforced fairly now, and people are not afraid to ask questions. I still work at the park, still get called out at odd hours, still come home to the sound of sparrows and finches chattering in my side yard. It is simple. It is predictable. It is exactly what I moved here for. The story does not end with a dramatic courtroom scene or a tearful apology. It ends with me standing in my side yard on a cold February morning, watching a cardinal land on the feeder and pick at the seeds. The snow has melted in patches, leaving the grass brown and wet, but there is still frost on the fence posts and ice in the gutters. The air smells like cold earth and distant wood smoke. Colin waves from his balcony, and I wave back. We are grilling burgers this weekend, his idea, and he says he is inviting half the complex. I told him I would bring the beer. The bird feeder swings gently in the wind, the metal hook creaking just a little. I think about taking it down sometimes, just to avoid the hassle, but then I remember the look on Mallory's face when I showed her the timestamp, the way her certainty cracked and crumbled. I remember the stack of door hangers with their warped edges, the lien threat, the gate lockout, the midnight phone calls. I remember every single step it took to get here, and I decide the feeder stays.